Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are terrified that they may be losing Florida, and there are different and new data points that bear this out. In Larry Sabato's recent crystal ball predictions, now that Alex Vindman has entered the Senate race there against MAGA Republican Ashley Moody, that Senate seat race is moving closer and closer to being a Democratic seat. I'll talk more about that in a moment. The polling on Friday for Donald Trump was absolutely atrocious nationwide, and it's been pretty bad in Florida too. And I'm not sure attacking Bad Bunny in the Hispanic community are raising Donald Trump's popularity in the Hispanic community there. But you take a look right here at the new AP North poll, Trump's overall approval right now, 36%. It's like the worst ever, like the worst in history. Economy, 34%. Country heading in the right direction, 29%. I guess some saving grace for Donald Trump is that he's more popular than J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance's approval at 32%. You've got headlines like this right now while Donald Trump's bragging about the economy is great, the Dow Jones is this and that. Middle-class Americans are selling their plasma to make ends meet. Last year, people in the U.S. made an estimated $4.7 billion selling their plasma. I guess that's the new American dream. But what's Ashley Moody doing? She was the individual who was picked by DeSantis to hold that Senate seat after Marco Rubio became the worst Secretary of State in history. Well, she's got big plans this week. She's going to the World Liberty Financial Forum. You know, that's the group where Donald Trump gets all of that crypto from the Middle East, and they invest in Donald Trump personally, and they don't really get anything they don't get a product. They get Donald Trump, and they get the quid pro quo of the White House. They get our semiconductor chips, and Donald Trump makes billions of dollars. And that's the company where Trump's kids are on it and Witkoff's kids are on it while they go and destroy American foreign policy abroad. You look at Trump's overall approval when it comes to some of these red states, Florida, negative 7.5%, according to The Economist. Others have him -2, -3. Some have him slightly, but overall, his popularity in Florida is plummeting. And one of the things we're seeing, as that Politico headline points out, is veterans, people who have devoted their life to service, stepping up. I mean, you've got Lieutenant Colonel Alex Vindman announcing his run for the United States Senate seat. He was up for promotion to be a colonel. You all probably remember the story. He told the truth about what he came forward courageously during the first Trump regime, told the truth about Donald Trump extorting Ukraine. Then Donald Trump got rid of him, and then he had to fight for his job back, and now Alex is running for the Senate. You have people like Phil running. I'll just show you. This was pretty cool. This was Phil endorsing Alex Vindman, and you just see these incredible veteran Democrats supporting each other in Florida. Let's watch this.
Hi, my name is Phil I'm a retired U.S. Navy commander. I want to tell you about my friend Alex Vindman, a retired lieutenant colonel in the United States Army. Alex is running for the Senate of the United States with a sense of integrity and duty to set conditions for all of us to thrive in freedom. It's so important to do that, thinking of children. Children are our future, and Alex will be there for them.
Should also note that, again, Alex Vindman, retired U.S. Army Lieutenant Colonel, was the Director of European Affairs for the United States United Security Council, served 21 years. He was wounded in Iraq, stood up when no one else would, as his brother Eugene Vindman writes. He also has an incredible video when he announced his run. I just want to show you, to remind you about his background. Let's just play this.
Lieutenant Colonel Alexander Vindman, a National Security Council official who testified against the president during the impeachment hearings, has been fired. Jim, the president has been fuming about Vindman apparently ever since he testified.
The last time you saw me was here, swearing an oath to tell the truth about a president who broke his. See, my family came to America as refugees to escape tyranny. And I sure as hell was not going to bow down to some wannabe tyrant. This president unleashed a reign of terror and retribution, not just against me and my family, but against all of us. Today, our country is in chaos. Thug militias attacking citizens, tariffs pushing prices sky high, healthcare premiums through the roof. And Florida homeowners are being absolutely screwed because Ashley Moody caved to the big insurance companies. They put Moody in the Senate to be a yes vote for Trump and the billionaires. She's not Florida Senator, she's theirs. I'm Alex Vindman, and I'm running to be your voice in the Senate. I served 21 years in the Army, was wounded in Iraq, I served presidents of both parties, and I've seen corruption in Washington up close. Over $1 million in Moody's corporate stock was traded last year, while she had access to insider information only Congress gets. That should be outlawed. They gutted disaster assistance for people trying to rebuild their lives, but she's okay with $40 billion bailouts for Argentina? Where's the bailout for Florida's families? I stepped up when my country needed a soldier. I stood up when someone had to say, no one is above the law. I'm asking you, stand with me now to put a check on Donald Trump and the corrupt politicians who think your tax dollars are their personal piggy bank. The billionaires and the special interests will throw everything they've got to try to stop us. But in the infantry, we didn't back down from a fight. In a democracy, you decide who's going to stand for you, the patriot or the politician. Join us.
Now let's bring in Alex Vindman. Alex, it's great to see you. It's no surprise that, people are going to say, but isn't Florida a red state? Isn't this a safe, solid red state? I think if anybody has the ability to flip that Senate seat, it's you. And that's why I think so many people are encouraged that you are running. But talk to us about, the plan to flip this seat.
Hey, thanks for having me back on, Ben, in different role this time. Look, I stepped in. I've been in Florida for more than 3 years. We came here as the first place we got a chance to choose to live after the military sending me across different parts of the world and just telling me where to go. We planted our roots here. My daughter's thriving. I moved my dad down about 6 months after us. So this is where this is home for us. And in the military, we have this expression, you go to some place and you leave it better than you found it. This state is headed in the wrong direction. We have a economy that's unaffordable. We have the highest insurance rates in the country. And my opponent, Ashley Moody, is a part of the reason that we are here, because she caved to the big insurance companies. We have insecurity in our streets. Large swaths of our community feel unsafe to go out of their homes. That is a product of Trump's abuse of power, setting in what looked like militias, the kinds of folks that we saw patrolling the street. In the military, when I was in combat, we had well-trained troops that were respectful to the civilians, even in combat zones, in war zones. That's not what Trump is doing. He's sending out a militia with a signal that they could do whatever they want. They could be heavy-handed. They're armed to the teeth. They look like the military to be able to abuse a population. This kind of chaos that we're seeing here and overseas, Trump embracing our enemies and casting aside our allies, the corruption, these gold-plated toilets and planes from Qatar, all these types of, we've never seen this level of corruption before, and the costs being shifted from the billionaires. They're getting the tax breaks. We're losing healthcare. They're getting all sorts of benefits, and the powerful or that are in their pocket are getting the benefits, and the burden's shifting to ordinary Americans. That is not something I'm going to sit back and watch unfold. And we have a clear path. Trump's margins across the country and in the state have shrunk because people are rejecting his policies. That's why you see him increasingly thinking about how he's going to steal an election, because he doesn't have any good ideas. And now Florida has a fighter in their corner, and that's how we're going to win the seat. If you're with me for this fight, please go to alexvindman.com and support me and support this effort. And we're going to take back the state in Trump's own backyard, regardless of what he throws at us.
People probably are saying, Senator Ashley Moody, she was appointed by DeSantis. So this was a relatively recent appointment after Rubio became Secretary of State or whatever his job is. And I think, she does two things. She stock trades, and she really loves that. She's like a day trader. And then the other thing she does is, whatever Trump orders her to do, she does. And that's why I showed, I guess the confluence of those factors is her, being like a keynote speaker at this World Liberty Financial Conference, which is the Trump Witkoff, hey, United Arab Emirates, we need $500 million just give it to us. Like you want our stable coin? We're not even going to give you that. Just give us $500 million, and we'll give you the United States semiconductor chips. And then we give them the most highly classified semiconductor chip, which no one would give them before because they're just going to give it to China, and they probably already have given it to China. So it's interesting because you are primed to take her on, just given your background also, as you were calling all of this out, when he was threatening to withhold the military equipment to Ukraine, which he's doing right now, obviously, again, whether it's the Patriot missiles, and she's the kind of person who joins Trump in doing those things. And you're the kind of person who says, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to focus on America.
Yeah. The reason we're going to win the seat is because the contrast between me as a non-political, somebody that's running for office for the first time, a career public servant, somebody that's reported corruption at the highest level, regardless of the cost, and my opponent, who's a career politician, an automatic yes vote for all of the chaos, all of the corruption in the Trump regime, that couldn't be starker. And I think the fact is that Floridians know this. They know that they will, for the first time in a long time, have a fighter in their corner. We're seeing wins in the special elections here. We've won consistently, really, since Trump took office. And we're going to be able to overcome, some of the historical baggage with regards to the state. And it's not just going to be my seat we're going to win. We're going to win a whole slate of Democratic seats down the line and make sure that we take the state in a different direction. And when we do this, we will have one control of the Senate, and we will offer America and the world a different future, one that's vastly different than the first year, the second year of his term, one that in which he's constrained from taking on his absurd agenda for chaos, self-enrichment, and chaos.
It's interesting. I saw DeSantis' recent post that he's reflected that he was worried about some of these special election results, what we saw in Texas Senate District 9, where there was a massive flip, a 31-point swing to a Democratic candidate there. I also saw DeSantis, saying that he disagrees with Donald Trump when it comes to putting data centers, in Florida. You have Byron Donalds, who's running for governor of Florida, talking about, what do we, on the one hand, Donald Trump wants to put data centers everywhere. On the other hand, Byron Donalds wants to please Trump, but then go, maybe not in my backyard when it comes to Florida, and so, and even the alligator Alcatraz, which costs billions of dollars, that's not it's from a human rights standpoint. I mean, I believe it's a crime against humanity. And I think people in Florida just don't want that happening they see it happening out. They don't want it happening in Florida. So they don't want this stuff there. And then you add on top of it the energy costs rising, the insurance costs rising, and just the day-to-day issues that are not being addressed in Florida while you have this Trump MAGA cheerleading without dealing with the day-to-day issues of Florida.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yesterday I went out and I went to what for most folks in Florida and certainly in Miami is a well-known spot. It's Freedom Tower. It's the portal for entry and processing for hundreds of thousands of Cubans that came to this country, very similar to my own story, coming as a refugee from the Soviet Union. And this building is going to be in the shadow of where Trump is planning to build his library. It's not going to be a typical library like the presidents build when they're out of office. This thing is going to be a hotel and a revenue generator for him. And it's going to tower over this iconic building that it's the Ellis Island of Miami. That's supposed to be sending the message that everybody could come to this country and have this idea of fairness and access to the American dream. So and then I visited a college campus, the Miami-Dade college campus there, just a couple of blocks away, talking to students. The things that were on their mind were all costs. It was the fact that the tax burden is being shifted off the ultra wealthy, and we're getting our services cut. And with regards to healthcare, folks were talking about affordability for housing. They're concerned about the fact that the highest insurance rates in this country don't just affect homeowners; they affect the property owners that rent their properties. That was on their mind. Health insurance. You don't usually expect a 20-something or a late teen to talk about health insurance, but they recognize that one health crisis could crush somebody's life. And I talked to faculty there. It was a beautiful thing to do. What wasn't on their mind? It wasn't self-enrichment schemes. It wasn't, private jets. It wasn't crypto scams. It wasn't embracing our adversaries and casting aside our allies. It wasn't any of the priorities that you see Trump talk about here. Certainly, Ashley Moody, my opponent, her focus is on bringing in the SAVE Act, or the Save America Act, this newest version out of the Senate, which is, when you don't have any ideas of that could win and get you votes in an election, what do? You try to steal it. So what is she trying to do? She's trying to make sure that we reduce the number of folks voting, that we make it harder for folks to vote by mail, because now you can't just submit a ballot. You have to submit a scanned document. Imagine your parents or grandparents kind of trying to figure out how to do that when they do their vote by mail. It's women that have been married, that have changed their names, are going to have they're going to have to provide additional documentation. American citizens that may still be struggling with the English language will have a harder time with regards to voting. That's what they're focused on, making sure that you lose your access to your right to vote, this fundamental right that every American citizen is granted. And I think that their priorities are completely wrong. And the Floridians and Americans know this, and we will see decisive outcomes both in this state and across the country.
Alex, where can people learn more about the campaign?
Look, you heard me talk about this. I'm going to be the fighter in the corner of Americans, like I have been, like my track record says. I'm going to be the fighter for Floridians on ending the chaos, crushing corruption, and cutting costs. And if you're with me in this fight, please join me at alexvindman.com. We need to get your support in order to be able to allow me to get my message out to folks that are just mainly focused on their lives. They're not paying attention to the politics. So please sign up as a volunteer and contribute to this campaign, and we're going to win this thing.
Alex was on the MeidasTouch network probably 4 or 5 years ago when this was just an idea and not a network. And so it's great to have you here 5 years later, watching you run for the United States Senate and for all you've done for our country. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks, Ben.
Everybody hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Want to stay plugged in? Become a subscriber to our Substack at MeidasPlus.com. You'll get daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, ad-free episodes of our podcast, and more exclusive content only available at MeidasPlus.com.